Welcome Game of Thrones fans, Johnny B. Crazy here, and let's discuss whether Arya Stark will spend her life in the service of the many-faced god, or will she be assassinated by the faceless men of Braavos. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe, hit that notification bell, and everyone else hit that thumbs up while you're at it. This will be a series that is relevant to many characters in A Song of Ice and Fire, and in this installment we will focus on show Arya only. I will do a book only installment of this video as well. Okay, so first off, I honestly love Arya and do not wish death upon her, but the evidence and foreshadowing for her demise, Valar Morghulis, or her lifelong servitude, Valar Deities, to the House of Black and White is pretty compelling. Let us begin by comparing a couple of religions, deities, and even some manga. We will begin to see the parallels for Arya as this video progresses. We begin with a brief and albeit simple rundown of what the Faceless Men are all about as a religious assassins guild. To put it simply, they are just that. For a fee, usually whatever you can afford, the Faceless Men will assassinate anyone for the most part. There is a catch, however. All men must serve, and part of the price for this deed is that in death you will serve in the Hall of Faces. They do not just assassinate, but also give the gift and mercy of death for those who seek it. As we see in the show, even that has its price, to serve in the Hall of Faces. There have been many comparisons to the many-faced god and the Thuggies, and rightly so, a religious cult who assassinated and robbed their victims in the name of the goddess Kali, goddess of destruction and rebirth. This is a very apt comparison, but I want to take you into the shadows of history and lore. On that note, we have the Shinigami, ancient Japanese deities who come in many forms, either luring victims to their demise or acting as a grim reaper of sorts. The first Shinigami were the Japanese creator gods, Izanagi and Izanami. Put in charge of creating the first land, Izanagi made the first island with a drop of salt water from the tip of his spear. This was their home for the remainder of their years, and 7 islands were created by them in total, that being Japan. Reminiscent of Braavos in a sense, in my opinion. Izanami, Izanagi's sister wife, is the goddess of creation and death. In my opinion, these deities have many ties to other A Song of Ice and Fire characters. For now, let's focus on Arya. The forced union of Izanagi and Izagami created many monsters and deities, causing strife and the ultimate search for and death of Izanami. Before her death, Izanami's spirit went from animal to human. This seems to represent a sort of warging, and perhaps could relate to Arya in the books, probably not the show. She could warg Nymeria in an act of desperation and then have her physical body killed in the process. Let's dig a little deeper into the Shinigami relating to Arya. All Shinigami are descended from Izanagi and Izanami. They became death dealers of sorts. The legends vary, but all seem significant. Some stories they wait on your candle to burn out and then take your soul to the afterlife. They did much more than that, it seems. They are often blamed for suicide and mysterious deaths, all the while being able to take the form of humans, spirits, and even animals. In the legends of suicide, the Shinigami drive you mad with thoughts until your death comes as a relief, often being led to a specific spot by a spirit held in service to the Shinigami. These spirits would help usher them to death. In the afterlife, you serve to help lead more doomed humans to their demise in hopes that history repeats itself. There are many varying legends and stories, even Shinigami making deals with the living, and in almost every case, this leads to the person's downfall. Just like the Faceless Man, once this contract or agreement was set in motion, it could not be taken back. You could not save a life or take a life without permission, so to speak. The person must then serve even in death, and this seems to be the situation Arya has put herself in, as well as going mad with her kill list perhaps. Now let's start back to where Arya's list began. She asks Jorn how he sleeps at night. He tells her the story of Willem, and how he repeated his name every night to fall asleep until one day he buried an axe so deep in Willem's skull that the axe had to be buried with him. Now this does remind me of when Jon told Arya that when the spring thaw comes she would be found dead with needle frozen between her fingers. As Jorn did wait years to bury that axe in Willem's skull, only for him to be sent to the wall in a life of servitude after. You can say at this point it's where she learns and creates her list, and it's the beginning of her downfall. It's a coping mechanism for sure, but she lets it consume her. Arya is the stranger personified in my opinion. There are numerous foreshadowing scenes of Arya's possible death, when Ned seems to be remembering the Tower of Joy while watching Arya train with Syrio, only for the session to end with his daughter being mock slain. Arya has much of the wolf's blood in her like her Aunt Lyanna and Uncle Brendan. Even though these were fierce and strong people, their free spirit and wild hearts took them down a path of doom. Going back to her list for a moment, there are very apt comparisons with the popular manga Death Note. In my research, I found an interesting Shinigami that has a list in which he chooses a mortal and gives them the power to write in the book. Any name that is written down, the Shinigami will kill. You can choose to pass this list to another or not touch it for 7 days. Most times this does not happen, as the list corrupts the user, leading ultimately to death. I mention this because it may be something D&D can pull from, given the lack of source material. Keep this in mind while we retrace Arya's steps a bit. Throughout her journey she meets many people, one being Jaqen Hagar. She saved him and 2 others from the Red God. She then owed 3 lives. Even in this she became slightly corrupted, and naming Jaqen as one of the names before taking it back. This is foreshadowing for Arya abusing her power and the suicide of who she thinks is Jaqen. We will get to that in a second. Arya bites off more than she can chew most times, and I love her for it. Everything from challenging Thoros and getting disarmed, all the way to when she tries to stab the Hound with needle and gets a nice backhand for it. As we see through all of this, her list consumes her every thought. You can't blame her. Arya begins her training at the House of Black and White, going through the process of becoming no one. She can't let go of Needle, and as John stated, I believe this is why she will not make it to spring. She takes a life that is not hers to take in Mirren Trant. For this a life had to be given. Jaqen takes the poison and kills himself, and Arya is inconsolable because she always loses everyone she cares for. But we must remember there is no Jaqen, only no one. The waif immediately changes to the form of Jaqen afterwards, and Arya must be punished with blindness as well. Now this didn't happen in the books, and that's why we are sticking to the show in this video. At this point, you have to realize there is no waif or Jaqen, only the personas that the faceless men take. After her training and regaining her sight, she is given an assassination assignment. She can't find it in her heart to kill Lady Crane, but doesn't stop there. She points out the girl who paid for the service. For this, Jaqen sent the waif to kill Arya, for she broke the rules and has shown she is incapable of becoming no one. Arya ends up killing the waif and adds her face to the Hall of Faces before holding Jaqen at needlepoint and saying, "I'm Arya Stark of Winterfell, and I'm going home." Now Jaqen could have easily killed Arya. Instead he let her go. Now he didn't do this because of some sentiment for Arya. Jaqen doesn't care, and besides, that isn't the original Jaqen anyway. It's easy to forget he is no one. I believe he let her go because of her list, or released her to see what she would do with her gifts. We have seen Arya get her revenge on the Freys, Littlefinger, and may even kill Cersei on the mountain. I do believe it possible for Arya to sneak in through the sewers of King's Landing, kill Qyburn, take his face, and then sick the mountain on Cersei perhaps. Would be some intriguing subterfuge. Regardless, Arya will not live till spring, and her list will be her demise. Whether she knows it or not, she signed a contract with the Faceless Men, using the sacred knowledge to get her revenge and being a danger to exposing their secrets. She cannot be allowed to live, unless she agrees to come back, which in the show I don't deem likely but possible. That's why we will see either Jaqen, the waif, or maybe the kindly man. More than likely Jaqen, because once he revealed himself after killing Arya, or giving her a choice, we would need a recognizable face in the show to instantly connect us to the Faceless Men. Perhaps Jaqen let her go to kill Mel. Mel tells her she sees a darkness in her, and eyes that she will shut forever, brown, blue, green, and that they will meet again. Could Arya have to make a choice between dying as Arya Stark of Winterfell, or become no one? Either way you look at it, Arya Stark stole from the many-faced god and misused the gifts given to her. Taking death in the form of revenge is not a valid reason for the many-faced god. If she wouldn't have used the faces and continued to boast about being trained by the Faceless Men, I believe Jaqen wouldn't care. She abused her knowledge and acted not as Arya Stark of Winterfell, but as a serving girl and as Walder Frey, walking around with a bag of faces and great hubris. Will this be what ultimately kills our favorite she-wolf? Can Arya survive a one-on-one confrontation with Jaqen? Probably not. Will Arya go back to Braavos and serve the remainder of her life and death in service to the many-faced god? Once she finishes her list, will she be found dead with needle in her hands? I hope not personally, but if the Faceless Men come for her, it won't be pretty. Tell me what you think in the comments, and check out my Many-Faced Gods Part 1 and 2 streams. They're pretty awesome. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. This video brought to you by Peter Baelish, forever in our hearts. And as always, I'm Johnny B. Crazy, signing off.